Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Namaduhu wa nasalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This video is about Surah Hud, which is chapter 11, verse 14 of the Quran. But before I give the translation, I want to state that almost all the early translations of the Quran have been by non-Muslims. The first English translation of the Quran was by a person called Alexander Ross in 1649. He did not know Arabic. It is said that he used to translate the Quran from a French translation. So in other words, it was a translation from a translation. This person, Alexander Ross, was a chaplain to King Charles I. In other words, he was a priest of the church. The next translation is believed to be by a person called George Sale in 1734. This translation was based on Latin translation in 1698. It is said that Thomas Jefferson, the President of the United States, had a copy of this translation. It is important to note here that such translations by non-Muslims presented a distorted message of Islam in the West, creating hatred and distrust towards Muslims and Islam. Westerners did not know that these translations were not accurate and the message of the Quran had been distorted to mislead the public. Unfortunately, such misleading translations have created what is called Islamophobia in the West, which exists until today. In 1917, a person by the name of Muhammad Ali, an Ahmadi Qadiani scholar, translated the Quran into English. It should be pointed out here that the Ahmadis, or Qadianis as they are sometimes called, are considered to be outside the fold of Islam, although many people in the West and in non-Muslim countries think that they are Muslims. It should also be noted that the Ahmadis, or Qadianis as they are called, were declared a non-Muslim sect in 1973 by the government of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. So they are not considered by law Muslims in Pakistan. In most other countries, people are not aware of their teachings, but countries where people know about their teachings, they are not considered within the fold of Islam. It should also be pointed out that the American by the name of Wallace Fard Muhammad, the founder of the Nation of Islam, exclusively used Muhammad Ali's translation. One can see how a misleading translation can lead to a distorted message of Islam. Translations into English by Ahmadi Qadiani scholars include Muhammad Ali 1917, Maulvi Sher Ali 1955, Muhammad Zafarullah Khan 1970, Amatul Rahman Umar and Abdul Manan Umar 1990. Ahmadis or Qadianis preach their message in countries where people are not familiar with the teachings, and people who live in these countries assume these teachings to be teachings of Islam. It is also important to note that some important facts about Muhammad Asad, whose translation of the Quran is being considered, or is considered a reliable translation, but people are not familiar with Muhammad Asad's background. He was a journalist and he became a diplomat later on. He was appointed the director of the Department of Islamic Reconstruction in August 1947, that is when Pakistan was created. He remained in that position until September 1948. He joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in September 1948 and remained there until 1951. He became Pakistan's representative in the United Nations in 1952. Throughout this time, he served under the openly Ahmadi Qadiani foreign minister by the name of Muhammad Zafarullah Khan. It is not surprising that his translation of the Quran is similar to the Qadiani translation of Muhammad Zafarullah Khan. There are many examples of his translations which is similar to Zafarullah Khan. In this video, I will give the example of Surah Hud, chapter 11, verse 14. According to the translation of Muhammad Zafarullah Khan of verse 14, the translation is, "If they should not respond to you, then know that it has been sent down full of divine knowledge, and that there is no God but He. Will you then make complete submission?" This is a translation of Muhammad Zafarullah Khan of Surah Hud, verse 14. Now, look at the translation by Muhammad Asad of the same verse. According to Muhammad Asad translation of this verse, which is 14, he says in the translation, "And know that this Quran has been bestowed upon from on high out of God's wisdom alone, and that there is no deity save Him. Will you then surrender yourselves unto Him?" So once again, notice that his translation is very similar, although the word used in the Quran is Muslimun. The Quran, as I said before, this verse is translated as, "And if they do not respond to you, then know that the Quran was revealed with the knowledge of Allah, and there is no deity except Him. Then would you not be Muslims?" Actually, that's the sense of this ayat. Then would you then not be Muslim? In other words, the word Muslim is used in the Quran, which is omitted by both Zafarullah Khan and Muhammad Asad. If you look at the translation of the same verse by Pickthall, you will notice that he is making the same mistake that is made by Zafarullah Khan and Muhammad Asad. According to Pickthall, the translation is, "And if they answer not your prayer, then know that it is revealed only in the knowledge of Allah, and there is no God save Him. Will you then be of those who surrender?" So actually, the sense is, will you not be of those who surrender? But all these three translations do not convey the message of Islam, do not convey the message of the Quran. It's confusing. A person who's reading these translations will not know as to what the Quran is saying. So once again, keep in mind that these translations, which are based on the translations by Qadiani scholars or scholars who are the Christians, scholars like George Sale and Alexander Ross, they send a confusing message to the reader. The reader will not know what the Quran is saying. So readers should be alert that when they're reading translations by non-Muslims, they may not be getting the message of the Quran. So it's very important to check the source to see who the translator is. Otherwise, they will be confused. Wa akhirat dawana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.